It's 3:17 in the morning. I'm standing on my porch in my pajamas, flashlight in one hand, phone in the other, recording. And she's in there, Karen, the HOA president, crawling through the hedge maze I built, crowbar in hand, muttering to herself, spinning in circles like a rat in a trap. She tried to tear down everything I built, literally. She thought she could destroy it all in the dark and get away with it. But I planned for this. I knew who she was. I knew what she'd try. So I hit record, and I waited. And now you're gonna see how one entitled woman went from HOA president to viral meltdown to handcuffs, all because she picked the wrong guy with a lawn. Stick around. This one's wild. My name's Daniel Reed. I'm 46 years old, divorced, no kids. A software developer who used to run a moderately successful startup in Denver until life ripped it all out from under me. I'm average in most ways. Average height, thinning brown hair, a little extra weight from the stress and the late-night coding binges. I wear glasses that are always sliding down my nose. I dress in whatever's clean, usually jeans and old flannels. Nothing flashy. Just a man trying to keep things together even if the seams are fraying. I'm not the kind of guy who makes waves. I don't yell, I don't fight. At least, I didn't, until I moved here. I don't have much left. I've got Rusty, a mutt with a crooked tail and a grumpy bark. And I've got this house. It's small, with creaky floors and old paint. But it's mine. And after everything I've been through, that means more than I can say. My wife had an affair with my co-founder. I lost my company in a legal mess that felt more like a public execution. My house? Gone. The people I thought were my friends? Gone. The only thing I managed to keep was Rusty, after months of fighting in court. So when I found this modest little house tucked in a quiet suburb, I thought maybe, just maybe, this could be my second chance. I didn't want much, just peace, privacy, and a place where nobody knew my name, where I could drink my coffee in silence and not feel like a ghost haunting my own life. But this neighborhood had other plans. Or more specifically, Karen had other plans. Karen Monroe, HOA president, power-obsessed, entitled. She had the kind of face you'd find in a catalog. Not because she was beautiful, but because she wanted you to think she was. Her hair was a stiff golden helmet, a blonde bob, blow-dried to death, never a strand out of place. Always dressed like she was late for a brunch she didn't want to attend. Pastel cardigans, khaki slacks, spotless white sneakers. Her lips were permanently curled into a judgmental smirk, and her voice? Sharp, clipped, like every word was a warning. She wore her HOA badge like it was a sheriff's star. She didn't run the neighborhood, she ruled it. From the moment I moved in, she made herself known. First, it was a note about my trash can being visible from the street. Then a comment about the color of my curtains. Wind chimes? Too noisy. Solar lights along the walkway? Out of alignment with HOA aesthetic standards. I bit my tongue. I let it go. I didn't move here to fight. Then one morning, I walked outside and saw her SUV driving straight through my lawn. I was stunned. I thought maybe she made a wrong turn. But then it happened again. And again. Always the same. Tires carving grooves through my grass, her car cutting across like my property was some kind of public shortcut. I tried being reasonable. I waved her down, asked her to stop. She just smiled, rolled down her window and said, "Oh, everyone does it. It's the fastest way out of the neighborhood." Everyone? No, she did it. I finally had enough. I spent a weekend putting up a low, decorative wooden fence. Just something to mark the boundary. Nothing aggressive, nothing fancy. Just a message. This is my yard. That Sunday evening, as I hammered in the last post, a neighbor walking his dog paused at the sidewalk. He glanced at the fence, then at me. "She's not going to like that," he said, barely above a whisper. "Karen?" He gave a small nod and looked over his shoulder. "Just be careful. She has a way of making people disappear." I laughed, but it stuck in my throat. The very next morning, it happened. I was in the kitchen, sipping coffee. Rusty was at my feet. And then, the crash. A screech of metal, a honk that sounded like pure rage. Rusty yelped and dove under the table. I dropped my mug, ran to the door, and yanked it open. Her SUV was half on my lawn. The front bumper crushed my flower bed. My garden gnome was in pieces. The new fence snapped in two. And there she was, standing beside her car like she hadn't done a damn thing wrong, arms crossed, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, eyes blazing. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, pointing at the ruined fence. I stared at her. "What do you mean? What is this? You just drove through my yard, again." "You blocked the shortcut," she said like I had committed a war crime. "I've been using this path for months." I took a breath, trying to stay calm. "Karen, this is my property. That's my driveway. That's my lawn. You have no right to drive through it." She waved a hand dismissively. "The HOA allows it. It's common knowledge. Everyone uses it." I shook my head. "You mean you use it? And you don't get to decide what happens on my property?" She stepped in close, her voice turning syrupy and sharp. "You're new here. Let me explain something. This neighborhood works because I keep it in order. You want to fit in? Don't start by being difficult." My heart was pounding. I'd dealt with controlling people before. I'd lost everything because I didn't stand up when I should have. But not this time. "You owe me for the damage," I said, voice low. "And don't think for 1 second I won't file a complaint." She let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "Oh, please. I am the HOA. Then she got in her SUV, backed over the rest of my flower bed, and tore off down the street. I looked out at the mess, the tire ruts, the broken wood, the shattered garden. Rusty came to my side, ears down. He nudged my leg and let out a low, confused whine. I reached down, scratched behind his ear, and looked back at what was left of the peace I tried so hard to build. And right then, I knew. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was the beginning of something bigger. "Sir, do you know this woman tried to run over a city inspector with a golf cart?" "But we're getting ahead of ourselves." 3 weeks later, Karen stands at my door with a tray of muffins, smiling like a Stepford wife. "Let's start over," she says sweetly. "No hard feelings?" That night, I find a hidden camera on my porch. She wasn't making peace. She was preparing for war. There's a special kind of quiet after chaos, the kind that makes you feel like the storm is circling back. The morning after the crash, I woke up groggy, my back aching from a night spent tossing and turning. I walked outside to survey the wreckage. My fence was a graveyard of splinters, the flower bed trampled. Rusty sniffed around the crushed garden gnome like it was a crime scene. I felt like I'd been hit by the SUV myself, but I still held out hope. Maybe the HOA would do the right thing. I emailed the board that afternoon. Attached photos, footage from my porch cam, a clear shot of Karen's SUV taking out the fence like a battering ram. A timeline of complaints, no response. Then, the next day, I got the email. Not for her, for me. "Dear homeowner, we have received complaints regarding unauthorized modifications to community access pathways. The recent fence installation on your property has been deemed disruptive to neighborhood traffic patterns. We kindly ask that you remove it immediately to maintain community harmony. Sincerely, HOA Board." I stared at the screen. My jaw clenched. Rusty let out a low growl from the couch. They were siding with her. That evening, as I was pulling weeds around the ruins of the flower bed, a voice startled me. "You're not crazy, you know." I looked up. It was Ellen, the neighbor from 2 houses down. Quiet, always polite, barely said a word since I moved in. "She's got them wrapped around her finger," she whispered. "You're not the first she's run off." "You're just the first one fighting back." She slipped something into my hand, a folded sheet of paper. HOA meeting notes, with Karen's edits, handwritten commands. Deny Daniel's claims. Use safety language. Push city angle if needed. Proof. Then she added more quietly, She's trying to file a motion to revoke your residency rights. You've got less than a week. Fueled by fury, I walked straight into the next HOA meeting. It wasn't dramatic at first. A half-filled rec room at the community center, cookies on plastic trays, bored members pretending to care. Until I dropped the printed footage and documents onto the table. You want to talk about harmony? Let's talk about manipulation, about favoritism, about an HOA president using her role to bulldoze neighbors she doesn't like. Karen didn't flinch. She just smiled. "Ah, Mr. Reed," she said smoothly. "We were just about to discuss your landscaping violations." "You mean the fence I put up to stop you from illegally driving through my property?" A few coughs, a few glances. Then Dunlap, the HOA secretary, mumbled, "Well, technically, Karen's been using that path for years. It's sort of tradition." One board member, Gerald, opened his mouth to speak. Karen cut him off. "Sit down, Gerald. We don't need cowards making things worse." The room went dead silent. Later that night, I found the mailbox cracked open. Inside, an envelope. No return address. Inside was a photo, grainy, black and white. My kitchen window. Me inside pouring coffee, taken from outside. A chill ran down my spine. I scanned the darkness behind me. No one there. But I suddenly didn't feel alone anymore. This wasn't just a neighborhood dispute. This was surveillance. That night, I sat on my back porch with a beer in one hand and Rusty's head resting on my knee. "Maybe I should just sell," I muttered. "Move on. Again." Rusty let out a small whine and looked up at me. I remembered what Ellen said. "You're the first one fighting back." But there was another voice inside me. "If you do this, you become like her. But if you don't, you lose everything." No, not this time. I pulled out my sketch pad. I didn't sleep that night. I planned. The next afternoon, Karen was waiting by my gate. In her hands, a file folder. She opened it slowly and pulled out papers. Court records, past addresses, even an old photo of me leaving the courthouse after my divorce. "You think I don't do my research, Mr. Reed? You think I don't know exactly who you are, what you lost? You'll lose again." She smiled like a snake. "They always do." That was the moment I stopped seeing her as a nuisance and started seeing her as a threat, a hedge maze, not just a barrier, a trap, a silent, living fortress that would confuse, frustrate, and expose Karen for what she really was. I contacted a landscaper the next morning. When I explained the idea, he just laughed. "That's the pettiest, most brilliant thing I've ever heard. Make it petty enough she'll regret ever learning my name." She said it was just a shortcut. Karen spinning in place, lost in the middle of towering hedges. Back to present. I took a deep breath and looked out at the ruins one last time. This wasn't about a lawn anymore. It was about standing your ground, no matter how twisted the path ahead got. I looked down at the sketch pad. At the corner of the page, written in pencil, Phase 2. This isn't just about Karen anymore. It's about the whole damn HOA. What would you do if the people meant to protect you were the ones tearing you down? Because I'm not running this time. Phase 3. Public exposure. Part 3. The maze is born. High-intensity version with spikes. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Mine was going to be delivered in neatly trimmed hedges. But before the first root hit the soil, I remembered something. Flashback spike. The real reason I fight Denver 2 years ago. The day I signed away everything, my business, my house, my future, my wife sitting next to her lawyer smirking. I said nothing, just nodded, took the hit. Back then, I didn't fight, and it cost me everything. Back to present. I looked at the sketch pad on my lap. Not this time. I spent the next few days obsessing over the layout. I didn't want a wall. I wanted a puzzle, a beautiful, frustrating legal monument to petty vengeance. And I wanted it to feel inevitable. If Karen chose to enter, it would be her choice. but once she did, she wouldn't be getting out easily. The landscaper I hired, Randy, was an old-school, quiet guy with leathery skin and a dry laugh. When I told him my plan, he leaned against his truck and just said, "Most people just build fences. You're going medieval. I respect that." We spent hours mapping it out in chalk. I had rules. No straight lines, no easy turns, and one path that led directly back to the entrance just to screw with her confidence. I ordered Japanese boxwoods, fast-growing, thick, and almost impenetrable. Randy went to work immediately. Randy slicing perfect lines into dirt, me hammering a wooden post, Rusty barking at a wheelbarrow, curious kids peeking over their handlebars, neighbors whispering. The sun rises, then sets, then rises again. The maze grows like something alive. Karen watches from her window, stone-faced. By day 3, neighbors started noticing. Kids rode by on their bikes, pointing and laughing. One older woman stopped and whispered, "Is that for her?" I just smiled. Another guy, Mark from down the street, leaned in and said, "I've wanted to do something to Karen for years. This is genius." I didn't answer. I just handed him a bottle of water and kept working. Karen hadn't made a move yet, but I knew she was watching. On the 4th night, I checked my security footage. Karen had walked past my property 3 times. Once at 2 a.m., her eyes scanned every inch. She paused at the sign. Shortcut closed. Welcome to the maze of doom. The next morning, I found a note tucked into my fence. No envelope, just a page torn from a planner. 5 words scrawled in all caps. "This isn't over, newbie." I framed it, hung it right next to my door. By the end of the week, it was ready. Karen didn't wait long. I was making eggs when I heard it, the familiar rumble of her SUV. I peered out the window just in time to see her make the turn. The hesitation was brief. The confidence in her face was stunning. She entered the maze. At first it was fine. She drove forward, then stopped, backed up, turned. Then came the honking, loud, long, frustrated. I stepped onto the porch with my coffee, Rusty beside me, watching her through the green walls. She laid on the horn again, then got out of the car. I could hear her cursing as she tried to find her way out. She walked in a circle, came out where she started. "Are you kidding me?" I waved. She didn't wave back. That afternoon, I received an email from the HOA titled Urgent Violation Notification. They claimed the maze created a safety concern and a visual inconsistency with community standards. I replied with 3 PDFs: city zoning laws, HOA, landscaping loophole policy. A signed letter from a legal consultant. Then I sent a final line: "I invite you to try the maze yourself." No response. 2 days later, she returned. But this time, she didn't come to drive. She came with garden shears. I saw her coming and hit record on my phone. "Don't do it, Karen," I called out. "That's destruction of private property." She turned, scissors in hand, eyes wild. "This isn't property. This is provocation." And yet, here you are, provoked. She growled, but the sound of a police siren in the distance made her pause. She dropped the shears, got in her SUV, sped off. I posted the video online. It hit 100,000 views overnight. The next morning, I found a basket on my porch. Inside, cookies. A note, handwritten. "Thank you." From all of us who couldn't fight back. Later that day, I saw Gerald, the board member Karen had silenced, standing at the end of my driveway. He gave me a nod. "We're reviewing her presidency," he said. Quietly. That evening, a man in khakis and a badge came to my door. "Routine HOA inspection," he said, but his badge looked cheap. "Name and credentials?" He hesitated. "Off the record," he finally said. "Karen sent me." I shut the door in his face. "Karen, I don't care if he has permits. This is war." "Daniel, and I hadn't even reached phase 3 yet." That night, I sat on the porch again, sketchpad on my lap. Rusty lay at my feet, tail flicking as the breeze passed. The maze was growing taller. The war was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I was winning. I looked down at the sketchpad again. Phase 3. The HOA implosion. What would you do if the rules were built to protect people like her? Because next, I wasn't just taking on Karen. I was going after the whole system. The HOA president was just arrested. Here's how I took her down, with a hedge maze. Karen in handcuffs, Hero dropping a binder, hedge maze glowing at night. They thought I was being difficult. I was just getting started. Karen didn't take humiliation well. After her meltdown in the maze went viral, things got quiet. Too quiet. I knew better than to trust the silence. 3 days later, I received a certified letter, hand-delivered by a man in a suit. HOA legal notice. You are hereby ordered to dismantle the unapproved landscaping structure within 72 hours. Failure to comply will result in fines and potential legal action. Stamped, signed, sealed by Karen Monroe, HOA president. But she made one mistake. She cited a policy that had been voided 2 years ago. Before the next meeting, a video started circulating in the neighborhood Facebook group. In it, I was yelling, "You'll regret this!" But the clip had no context. No beginning, no ending. Neighbors were divided. But I had the full recording, the one where Karen had screamed first, unprovoked. I uploaded it with timestamps. It flipped the narrative in hours. I walked into the next HOA meeting with a binder. Inside, an official zoning review, neighborhood petitions, and a notarized affidavit from a city engineer. Binder slams on table, Karen's eyes widen, Gerald leans forward. And then came the bombshell. I had also submitted a formal ethics complaint to the county against the HOA for harassment and abuse of power, with documented incidents. Gerald, the soft-spoken board member, stood up. We moved to suspend Karen Monroe's presidential authority pending investigation. Silence. Then slow, scattered claps from the back of the room. Later, Mark from down the block told me what happened next. Karen had offered him repairs on his fence in exchange for turning on me. He told her to shove the offer, then brought me a stack of petition signatures. We're tired of being bullied, he said. Let's finish this. Karen stormed out of the building. The moment the doors slammed behind her, I knew this wasn't over. And I was right. That night, motion sensors triggered at 3:17 a.m. I checked the camera. Karen. She was wearing gloves, a hoodie, carrying a crowbar. She entered the maze. I watched, breath held, as she tried to smash her way through. But the hedges didn't move. They absorbed her swings like a sponge. 10 minutes in, she was spinning in circles. 20 minutes later, she dropped to her knees. I stepped outside, flashlight in hand. Need a map? She screamed and took off running, crashing through a weak point in the bushes and disappearing into the night. 2 officers showed up the next morning. I handed them the footage. Karen was charged with trespassing and attempted destruction of property. She wasn't HOA president anymore. Turns out, Karen had been funneling HOA funds into community improvement accounts. That just happened to be paying for landscaping at her own house, and she had submitted fake complaints about neighbors to push them out. She was banned from future HOA involvement indefinitely. A few days after the arrest, an elderly neighbor I'd barely spoken to knocked on my door. She handed me a tin of cookies and said, "I wanted to plant roses. She told me I couldn't. Thank you for showing us we're allowed to live here too." She didn't stay long, just smiled, then left. But that hit harder than any victory. A month later, the maze still stood. Now it had lights, signs, and a donation box. Neighborhood kids turned it into a Halloween haunt. Local reporters called it the most creative protest in HOA history. Neighbors stopped me on the street, smiling, inviting me over. One even offered to help expand the maze. I wasn't the newbie anymore. I was the guy who stood up. As I sat on the porch, I remembered when I first moved in. standing alone, watching Karen drive over my flower bed like it was nothing. The fence, the ridicule, the silence. Now it was just me, Rusty, and a hedge maze that became a legend. Karen, in her car, parked 2 blocks away, watching from behind tinted windows. No words, just eyes burning through the windshield. I sat on the porch with Rusty, sipping coffee as the sunrise painted the hedge walls gold. They said I was being petty, overdramatic, impossible to work with. HOA letter torn in half. Karen escorted to a car, kids laughing inside the maze. But sometimes, petty is just what justice looks like. My phone buzzes on the table. Notification, HOA annual election results are in. I smile, then frown. If you've ever had a neighbor like Karen, you're not alone.